Hello and welcome to All About Cars, our weekly show where we take all your car related questions and then answer them. So let's get straight to the questions. Let's begin with Instagram, and we've got Zishan. Zishan says he's looking to buy a hatchback. He wants a car with good road presence and good ride quality and good build quality. He says, should he go for the Altroz diesel? Altroz diesel, yes. I mean, you've got the Altroz as a car, looks good. It has good ride, and with the diesel, you have good torque as well. So yes, if you like the Altroz diesel, absolutely go for it. Mohit says he's looking at the new Hyundai i20. He is asking us which is the best variant to go for. Well, the i20 is a reasonably well equipped car, no matter which variant you pick. For us, of course, the highest spec variant makes a lot of sense because you get all the bells and whistles. So it is a little expensive, but that's the one we'd recommend. Sagar says, which is a better car to go for, Nexon or the Altroz? Now, if you're looking at the petrol, of course, the Nexon is the better choice. Even when it comes to diesel, the Nexon is the better choice between these two cars. And why? Because A, you've got higher clearance. Two, you've got a more practicality in terms of how you can use the boot. And it's an SUV. We all love SUVs. Rohit says that he's looking for his first car, and he's interested in the Celerio AMT. He says, is it worth going for the car now or wait for the newer version, and when would the newer version be coming? So the newer version is definitely under testing. It will probably come sometime next year. And if you can wait, yes, of course, I mean, it's definitely worth waiting because the Celerio now in its current form is on its last legs, and then you'll have a new car. If you wait for a little while, and I'm sure you're going to keep the car for 3 to 5 years, so better to wait now and then have a newer car. Tejashwar says he is looking at buying the Fortuner, but he's heard there's a new Fortuner coming in 2021. Should he wait for that or buy the current one? Now, it's December. If you are looking at buying the Fortuner, you should buy one, but only if you're getting like really big discounts. The car that will come in 2021 is not going to be like a major facelift or a brand new car. It'll be a 2021 version. So it might have a few changes, maybe a little more equipment or thereabouts. But if you get a really good discount now, which you should because it's December, people want to get rid of the 2020 plate cars. So buy the Fortuner now, otherwise wait. And now let's take some questions off Facebook. We've got Charles. Charles says he wants to know which is the best option to go for, the Fortuner, the Endeavour or the Gloster. Our pick would be the Endeavour. It is, yes, it's not as high tech as the Gloster, and it might not be as great off-road as the Fortuner, but it is like a really, really well-rounded product compared to all three. On-road dynamics are the best in terms of how it rides over surfaces. It's not like super plush, but it's pliant and flat. So and even when it comes to going off-road, it can manage it. And in terms of tech, sure, not as much as Gloster, but the Endeavour is by far the better option or the best option of the three. Tarit says he's confused between the Sonet 1.2 HTK, the Nexon XMS. Which one should he go for? We'd say go for the Sonet 1.2. It is smaller than the Nexon in terms of interior space, might not be as good as the Nexon, but when it comes to driving, when it comes to living with the car, the Sonet is a newer car, and that's the one we recommend. Rahul says, which is the best car to buy under 12 to 13 lakhs? He's looking at things like good build quality, good fuel efficiency, good basic features, and this will be his first car. So he wants to know whether he should go for an automatic or manual. He says he stays in Bangalore, and his daily running in the city is about 30 to 40 kilometers. So we'd say definitely go for an automatic, given that you're staying in as busy a city as Bangalore. You're never going to end up enjoying the manual. You're going to end up disliking it because of the constant effort. Your left foot's going to be involved in pressing and releasing the clutch, etc. So go for the automatic, definitely. And my two recommendations would be depending on whether you want a little bit more flash or a little more or less flash, would be the Sonet and the Venue. The Sonet is a little more flashy, the Venue not so much. They're essentially the same cars, and in the sub 4 meter SUV class, these are currently the benchmarks that you can go for. Bhushan wants to know whether he should go for the Creta SXO or the i20 Asta, MT or 80. Now, I think the price differential between the Creta SXO and the i20 Asta would be significant. So if you can afford the Creta SXO, then that's the one you should go for, because you're getting a larger car, you're getting a car that would prove to be more practical with more people. It's also a product that's better defined, and fitness of purpose for that product is better. So you would probably hold on to that product longer as well. And now we've got a barrage of questions regarding the Magnite. It's proving to be quite popular. So we decided that we'll just club all of them and give you one answer that might be simpler, but I will just read out the names of the people or all of you who asked the question with Magnite as being one of the options that you're looking for. So there's Vijay, there's Santosh, there is Farooq, there is D4SS as could be Das, I'm not sure, but that's what it's written. And there's Bertram, and there's Senthil. So everybody wants to know whether the Magnite is a good option to go for. Now, of course, everybody's comparing it to different cars. Somebody's comparing it to the Jazz, somebody's comparing it to the Ignis. So we've got, and somebody's comparing it to the Altroz. So, I will touch upon how it compares to these three cars in a bit. But first, let me tell you about the Magnite. If you're looking at the Magnite, you should only look at the turbo versions. Forget about the naturally aspirated one, because then your ownership experience, driving experience is not going to be that good. So go for the turbo. And now between the manual and the CVT, I personally prefer the CVT. If you're living in the city, the CVT is just a more seamless, smoother car, or you know, the option to go for. Plus, it's able to extract what the turbo is able to deliver better. With the manual, you've got more things to do. It's not the best shifting gearbox. It's not releasing the clutch requires some thought. It's not as intuitive. So, but I mean, if CVT is too expensive, or if you want a manual, then of course. But if you're looking at the Magnite, look at the turbo. Now, which of the turbo versions should you go for? So we'd say if you can afford the XV Premium, it's a nice loaded car, that's the one you should go for. But if it's not the XV Premium, even one step lower is a good option to settle for. Now, comparing it with the Jazz, the Altroz and the Ignis, between the Ignis and the Magnite, definitely the Magnite. Between the Altroz and the Magnite, the Altroz will offer you more seating or better seating for 3 people abreast. It's also a hatchback and not a SUV, so your driving position is better. But the only, the diesel Altroz makes sense, the petrol not so much. If you're looking at a petrol version, I think, and if you're okay with the turbo Magnite, then the Magnite. If you're looking at naturally aspirated for both, then of course the Altroz makes more sense, because it's just a more car-like than the Magnite in that sense. Now, the Jazz or the Magnite Turbo, again, the Jazz is essentially a very practical, a very sensible purchase. There is not a lot of excitement around that car when you look at it, when you own it in terms of features, etc. But if you're looking for a practical tool, then the Jazz. Otherwise, the Magnite. So I hope I'm able to answer the questions around the Magnite. We also have a detailed review, so you can check that out on our channel. And yeah, so that covers the whole length of whole series of questions that we got on Magnite. And just to remind you, the Turbo, Magnite Turbo, that's the one you should go for. And if you can, pick the CVT, because that's the one I would go for. And now let's get back to the other cars apart from Magnite. And we've got Abdul. Abdul is interested in the Tiguan Allspace. He wants to know when it comes to driving, especially going around corners, is the Tiguan better than the Endeavour and the Fortuner? And the simple answer to that is yes, yes, yes. It is significantly better than these two, and the main reason is because the Fortuner and the Endeavour are body on ladder frame SUVs. They are heavy, they're large, they're tall. The Tiguan is a monocoque SUV. It's like a car, so it's closer to the ground. It's not as heavy, especially towards the top. So naturally, it's flatter around corners. There's more feel around corners, and you can carry more corner speed. So if you like driving, if you like corners, Tiguan, no doubt, compared to the other two. Manpat is interested in buying the Kia Seltos DCT, but he says he's heard about heating issues with the dual clutch transmission, and he wants to know that can an auto hold function, which comes with the Creta, cure or ensure that the heating does not take place. Now, that will completely depend on what the auto hold function does. Now, unfortunately, I'm not completely aware how the one on the Creta works, but if the auto hold function disengages the drivetrain, then of course it will work better than you staying on the brake while the drivetrain is still engaged in a DCT. Because the whole heating issue is essentially because the clutches are still engaged, right? I mean, it's still trying to propel the car, but you're holding it back with the brake. So that's why they recommend that for DCT, especially in cases of the Kia cars or the Hyundai cars now, that if you come to a traffic signal, if you're in stop and go traffic, it's best to keep shifting between N and D and D and N, which will avoid these heating issues. Even if you do get a message that says that the transmission is heating up, you can pull to the side, wait for some time, and it's good to go. Like we've said in the past, these heating issues do not cause any damage to your car, to your drivetrain, none of that. It is only an inconvenience because you might have to park on the side. Vivek says he's got 10 lakh rupees. Should he buy the Venue SX or the Creta e-diesel and then upgrade the Creta using aftermarket parts? So go for the Venue SX because it's better spec. You cannot add the features that you get in the Venue in the Creta in the aftermarket, and even if you do, some of them that you can find, those things, those aftermarket accessories, unless Hyundai themselves is selling them to you, you don't know whether they've been tested. You don't know how well they'll fit with your car. You don't know what sort of, what would you need to do to the wiring harness, clip, clap. And then we've heard so many horror stories when you play around with the car's wiring, the cars tend to go up in flames. Not always, but mostly when there's a car fire, it's because somebody has played around with electricals to fit something new. So stick with the Venue. Go for the higher version of the Venue. That would be a better option. Ritvik wants to buy an automatic family car. His options include the Grand i10 Nios, the Swift AMT, the Baleno CVT, and the Nissan Magnite CVT. So let's say that between the Swift and the Baleno, go for the Baleno, the CVT, because CVT is a better gearbox, a nicer, more refined gearbox compared to the AMT. AMT, you get a lot of head nod every time there's a shift, so it's not very comfortable. CVT that way is seamless. So if you're a Maruti fan, between the Swift and the Baleno, go for the Baleno CVT, and between the i10 Nios and the Baleno, Baleno's again more spacious, so that's the one maybe you can look at. Between the Magnite and the Baleno, again the Baleno is more spacious. It's a good family option compared to the Magnite. Magnite's a little cramped in that sense. You of course get more features in the Magnite, but the Baleno as a family car for 5 people with a boot space and an automatic gearbox makes good sense. Madhu's written to us saying that he drives a 2001 Santro. Now he's looking at upgrading. What car should he go for? He's still looking for a car for city use and then an occasional highway trip. He says that his budget is limited to 8 lakhs. So we'd say go for the Grand i10 Nios. It is, you remain in the family if you've enjoyed the Hyundai service experience, etc., that can continue. If not, then you can write to us and tell us, and we'll give you another option, a different brand. But even as a car, the Grand i10 is well built, it's well spec'd, and it's good value for money. So that's what we'd say you should go for. Now we've got 3 people who've asked us a fun hatchback for around 10 lakh rupees. We've got Vishwanath, we've got Vignesh, and we've got the Conclave, real name not given. So all 3 want to know what is a fun hatchback they can buy for around 10 lakhs for performance, handling, and of course there's maintenance and fuel efficiency. So clearly, if you're looking for driving performance and that's so, then we'd say the Polo is a great option to go for when it comes to, I mean, engineering wise, when it comes to driving dynamics, it's right up there. If you don't want the Polo, then of course there is the Figo. Figo is not as let's say mechanically good as the Polo in terms of smaller things like the gear shift quality or your seating, how you sit in the car and how the steering responses, etc. But when it comes to maintenance, the Figo is one of the cheapest hatchbacks that you can have, and it's no slouch around corners. I mean, it's still fun to drive. It's not as communicative, as enjoyable as the Polo, but if you don't want the Polo, then the Figo is a good option to go for. Jay is looking at a crossover, an SUV for around 11 lakhs rupees. He's considering the XUV 300 W6 version. He wants to keep it for 10 plus years, and he wants to know if the Mahindra experience will be completely hassle-free, or owning that car will be completely hassle-free, or should he go for the Hyundai Venue or the Kia Sonet. Now, when it comes to hassle-free ownership, there are no guarantees. Whether you buy a Hyundai, whether you buy a Kia, or you buy a Mahindra. If you like the XUV 300, you should absolutely go for it. It is one of the better cars that Mahindra has produced. There are no glaring issues with the car, be it reliability or otherwise. So there are no issues to talk about. Can you run into issues? Absolutely, but that can also happen with the Venue and the Sonet. Like I said, no guarantees. So go for the XUV, you like it, it's a good car, it's a nice car, it's a spacious car, it's good to drive as well, and it's easy to look out of. So yeah, the XUV 300 completely works. We've got a couple of questions regarding EVs. We've got Padmajan and Vijaya, who've asked us about electric cars that will come out in 2021, specifically the WagonR EV, the Tiago EV, and the Altroz EV. And what would their range be compared to the only other affordable EV currently in the market, the Nexon EV. So for all these cars, I think, given that the battery tech will not change when these cars are launched sometime next year, the range would be lesser, because I think Tatas and Maruti would want to use smaller battery packs to go with the city-centric approach for these hatchbacks. But in terms of driving, in terms of refinement, in terms of what you're going to get, the Altroz and the Tiago are going to be pretty similar to what we've seen on the Nexon, and Nexon is a very impressive EV in that sense. Of course, these would be cheaper, so that's there. As for the WagonR EV, well, we don't know how that's going to turn out until we drive it, so it's very difficult to pass a comment or a judgment on that car without having driven it. Vivek wants to know if Tata will launch a Nexon Dark Edition soon. So we'd say yes, it would, because we've seen that Tata Motors has had success with the Harrier in their, when they did the Dark Edition, then they did the Camo Edition and those kind of things. So it just gives buyers an additional reason to purchase a car when there is something exclusive, something new, something that's not mainstream, even in mainstream cars. So yes, I think we should see all of that in the Nexon, and it's not, and Tata Motors has played around with the Nexon with these special edition. There was, I think, a crazy edition sometime back. So yes, you can expect the black edition also to come. Pawan wants to upgrade his Honda City, the new Honda City tires. He says, should he go for the 195/60 R15 or should he go for the 195/65 R15? So currently, if you buy the top spec Honda City, you get 16-inch wheels, you get 185 section tires. So what you want to do is you don't want to increase the overall diameter of the tire, because then it can lead to fouling with the wheel well, especially under braking or turning, etc. Now I know that you're going from 16 to 15, but you're also going wide in width, which means you're going to have a taller tire because your aspect ratio is not changing. So that's something you got to be careful about, and for that reason we'd say go, if you have to make this switch, stick with the 60 aspect instead of the 65. Sachi wants to know, or wants us to explain a little bit about the VW Group's DSG gearboxes, whether VW uses a dry clutch or a wet clutch, and what's the difference between the two for the customer, and is the wet clutch more reliable. So VW uses both a dry clutch and a wet clutch. The 7-speed ones that we've gotten in India have been dry clutch. The 6-speed ones that we got earlier were wet clutch options. So the basic difference, of course, is, as the name suggests, dry and wet. So the wet clutch is bathed in oil, and that comes with a few advantages, like it runs cooler, it can handle more torque, and in theory it is more reliable. The dry clutch one, of course, to start with, it will be lighter because there's no it's not bathed in oil, and it is also more efficient because there are less lag. I mean, it doesn't have to deal with the drag of the oil that always sits in a wet clutch. Here it's pulled in, utilized, and let go. So it's more efficient, and so that's the essential difference. In theory, like I said, the wet clutch would be more reliable, but both these gearboxes have been designed for their lifetime, and it would be wrong to say that the dry clutch is less reliable than the wet clutch. Intended purposes are different. The dry clutch is used for lower torque engines, the wet clutch is used for higher torque engines. So that sort of thing is there, and I mean, after a lot of engineering, this is the compromise that they've settled on. So that's the essential difference. So how does it affect a customer? I mean, you can't really choose whether you can, buy a dry clutch or a wet clutch in a particular car. You get what you get. But there's nothing to really worry about in that sense. Yeah. So Durgesh says that he's owned a Vento for 5 years. Now he's looking to upgrade. He was thinking about booking the Polo, but now he's hearing about the MQB platform coming to India, and he's wondering whether he should book the Polo or the Vento, or look at the i20 or Nexon or Venue. And he says he's not been able to make up his mind. His preferences are driving experience and build quality. So the Polo will not come on the new MQB A0 iron platform for a while. We will first see the new SUVs from Skoda and VW coming in mid of 2021, which will use this new Indianized MQB platform. Then we will see the new Vento and the Rapid, and after that we will see the Polo come in. So that's still it's quite far away. Now the question is, should you book the current Polo Vento, or wait or book some other car? Now that's completely up to you. Given that you're looking for driving experience and build quality, we'd say for driving experience, the Polo TSI is still a lovely car. The manual is what we prefer over the GT TSI, because the GT TSI now has a torque converter instead of a dual clutch. So the manual is a good option to go for. That's definitely the one if you like driving. And build quality, again, I mean, there's no concern when it comes to VW's build quality. So from all your choices and your needs, your preferences, we'd say go book the Polo, book the TSI manual, and have a blast. Vignesh has asked us if you have the turbo petrol and diesel variant, same variant available at the same price, would it make more sense to go for the diesel? Now the diesel, again, it makes more sense if you're gonna put a lot of mileage on the car, if you're gonna drive a lot of kilometers, yes. But between these two, I would still go for the petrol, because petrols are inherently quieter, they are inherently more refined, and they rev more. So if you like driving, there are more revs to play with, which is always a more enjoyable experience. So between these two, even if they are the same price, I would say the petrol makes more sense if you like driving. Diesel, if you're gonna do a lot of kilometers. That's it. Sam wants to know, when will Volkswagen launch the T-Cross in India, and would it be a good alternative to the Creta? So the T-Cross is coming to India in the form of the Tiguan, which was unveiled at the Auto Expo. Now we've seen that car at the Auto Expo. We don't know how that drives compared to the Creta, but first impressions, Creta will be roomier. We could expect features that would be similar. I don't know what the connectivity options that VW will give with the Tiguan, but in terms of space, it's the Creta. In terms of comfort, I still think it would be the Creta. In terms of driving dynamics, I think it would be the Tiguan, but we'll find out. I mean, the Tiguan comes out sometime mid of 2021, and we'll get to drive it then, and then we'll have a clearer answer. Udit wants to know whether he should go for the i20 DCT Asta O or the Venue DCT SX Plus. So we'd say go for the i20, and the main reason for that is if you're going to use the car in the city, you want a hatchback, it's a nicer car to drive, there's more space on the i20 compared to the Venue, and I like the seating ergos also on the i20. Plus it's a newer car, it's just come out. So between these two, I would say go for the i20. Dhiren is interested in buying the Dzire, and he says, and the reasons for looking at the Dzire, he says, is space, drivability, and of course the claimed fuel efficiency, which is 23 plus kmpl for the manual. So he wanted to know how is the car, or what's the fuel efficiency like in day-to-day driving, and he would also want to know if there are cars with better mileage or better fuel efficiency that he could go for. So the real world mileage for the Dzire would be around 14 to 16 kmpl. Are there cars with better fuel efficiency than the Dzire? Yes, but then you have to go down in size, you'll have to go for hatchbacks, and you will not have the same sort of space and comfort and feel that you want in the Dzire. So, and as we see it, 14 to 16 kmpl is still pretty good for what you're getting in the car. So yeah, that's that. And that's a wrap on All About Cars. I will not see you next week. We'll have one of my colleagues will be here, and but don't fret. I mean, we'll still do the show, and my colleague is more talented than I am, more knowledgeable, so you'll get what you want. He'll answer all your questions, and I'll see you when I see you.